I am fascinated by the CJ Stroud situation. Chris Sims and I talked about it yesterday morning because just before the show began, I had seen this back and forth between Brady Quinn and Ryan Clark about CJ Stroud. Did he ghost the Mannings at their passing academy? And there was, I think, back and forth all day yesterday on Twitter between Ryan Clark and Brady Quinn about this. And like, it's just odd to me that this stuff is coming out now. Is it that the media is finally catching up to it, or is it that there are agents and teams that are aggressively pushing it? You know how this goes, Peter. There's a team out there that would love nothing more than to have CJ Stroud to fall into their laps. So let's go ahead and traffic in all the negativity because maybe he'll be there when we pick. And then you've got competing agents, CAA, Athletes First. CAA has Will Levis. Athletes First has CJ Stroud. And you get a lot of that goes on. It just is odd to me that it's reaching this fever pitch now when just a few weeks ago, CJ Stroud was a betting favorite to be the first overall selection. So first the Panthers convince enough people that that's not the direction. And now you got this situation where it feels like Stroud could sink like a stone.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to sink like a stone. I don't think he's going to go any lower than number 4. And I think I thought what Peter Schrager did in his mock draft this week was really smart. And that is he had the Indianapolis Colts trading up to number 2 and taking CJ Stroud. And the Texans went down to number 4. And so I don't think he goes any lower than 4, but I think it will be a surprise to many people, maybe not by a week from now, because we're starting to understand that he really might go a couple of slots lower than everybody thought he would go. But Mike, that's what happens at this time of year. It really does, whether it happens in the moments before the draft or a week before the draft. You know, we saw what happened with Laramie Tunsil. You've seen what happened with Warren Sapp a generation ago or more than that. And when static appears around the name and the resume and the reputation of a player, there are going to be people who take that seriously. And look, and it isn't just this, honestly. If there were one thing like this, was there a misunderstanding with the Mannings? Was there not? It's one thing is not that big a deal. But for there to be the kind of noise about CJ Stroud in the NFL community right now, it's got to be more than one thing. And so that's why, to me, I think, I don't know. I am doing my one and only mock draft for Monday. And Mike, if I had to publish on it right now at this moment, I'd still put CJ Stroud number 2 to Houston. Because and I'm not saying that's what I'm going to do Monday, but I continue to think that how can Cal McNair and Nick Caserio talking about this long-term construction job on their team exit this draft either with, and let's say it's Hendon Hooker, with some other quarterback other than C.J. Stroud. And let's say it's Hendon Hooker because he is rapidly gaining steam in the days before the draft. Well, you don't even know if Hendon Hooker is playing football this year. And he probably will at some point. But you have to ask yourself, are you willing to go into this season right now, if you're the Houston Texans? Do you want to say to your fans, oh, by the way, get excited. It's either going to be Case Keenum or Davis Mills quarterbacking the first game of the season. This fan base and these people who are renewing season tickets are renewing them, and they want a new quarterback badly. And who knows what position you're going to be in a year from now. What if you have the 8th pick in the draft and you can't move up to take, let's say, Caleb Williams or whoever else is going to be the new bright, shiny object in 2024? That's why all I can say is I don't care if you don't think C.J. Stroud is perfect, if you have X, Y, and Z problems with him. man, unless you've got a major problem with him if you're Houston, I still find it hard to believe that they'll pass him.
The counterbalance to all that, too, is you got D'Amico Ryans as the head coach who comes from San Francisco, where look what happened with the 3rd overall pick 2 years ago. Look what happened with the final pick in the draft last year. And as Sims was saying earlier this week, D'Amico Ryans may simply want his Nick Bosa, whether it's Will Anderson, whether it's Tyree Wilson, whoever it is,
Tyree Wilson,
top edge rusher. Yeah. And then pick up your quarterback later, because you can pick up a quarterback all the way down to the final pick in the draft, and it can work out for you. An extreme example, but still, that's the perspective D'Amico Ryans is bringing to this.
Let's be fair about this. There's been one time in NFL history where Mr. Irrelevant had a rookie year that last year's Mr. Irrelevant had. That is a freak of nature. And I think it is, I'm not saying this about you, but I think it's ridiculous to think that D'Amico Ryans is walking in and say, hey, we can get the 17th quarterback in this draft and we'll coach him up and, man, he's going to be good. Kyle Shanahan had no idea when they picked Brock Purdy 958th in the draft last year that he was going to be Brock Purdy. And so all I'm saying is that it's one thing to say we can solve our edge problems because we don't have an edge rusher, and that is a vital position on any team. We'll get our Myles Garrett. I mean, if indeed, Tyree Wilson, who I think is their preference, or Will Anderson, either one of them is the choice. That's fine. And I'm not going to say, man, what a dumb pick. But all I can say is the Houston Texans had better have some answer coming out of this draft at quarterback instead of the incumbents on their roster.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting Ryan's position is going to be, let's make sure we have the last pick in the draft and take whichever quarterback's left. But when you compare the Trey Lance experience to the Brock Purdy experience, I could see Ryans being of the mindset we can find a quarterback later than the 2nd overall pick. We can't find a potential generational pass rusher later than 2nd overall, especially since the Texans also have the 12th pick.
If that's what Tyree Wilson is. I want to say one last thing before we move on. Yeah.
I want to say one last thing about that, because I've been thinking a lot about the Texans trading down, and you look at the teams that may want quarterbacks, and 2 of them are in their division. The Titans at 11, the Colts at 4. And I think back to last year, my son is still pissed that the Vikings traded with the Lions to the pick that became Jameson Williams, because he thinks the Vikings are going to be haunted by Jameson Williams for years to come. And I don't think the Texans would be willing to hand the Colts their franchise quarterback. I don't think when it comes down to it, they'll do it. Think about how this all came to be, where the Texans don't have the 1st overall pick. They screwed around and beat the Colts late in a meaningless Week 18 game, and they locked in at 2 and 4 respectively. And I don't care what the Colts are giving us. I'm not giving them C.J. Stroud in the chance that Stroud becomes Peyton Manning, and we got to deal with this guy. We're never going to hear the end of it if C.J. Stroud becomes a high-end franchise quarterback. I think that's enough to get the Texans to say, sorry, we're not doing this.
Maybe. I would always be more concerned with what my team is rather than another team. And the reason why I understand what you're saying, Mike, but I don't think that would be foremost on Nick Casario's mind, is that if you believe that C.J. Stroud is a good player, you're A, not trading him to Indianapolis, B, you're picking him. And so, if you think his warts are going to show, then the one thing that trading with Indianapolis would do is it would mean that every time, twice a year for the next X number of years, that C.J. Stroud plays the Houston Texans, it will be a Super Bowl for C.J. Stroud. Where on Wednesday at his press conference with the local media in Indianapolis, he'll say, hey, it's just another game. That's just, it's just one of 17 on the schedule. Bull crap. It will be a giant game twice a year for C.J. Stroud. And so, look, it'd be a fun story. It certainly would, but I don't think that would stand in the way of the Texans. And Mike, let's go back to my Hendon Hooker theory. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that this team wants Hendon Hooker. And let's say that this team has a pretty good feeling that they're going to get Tyree Wilson at number 4. Let's just say. All right? Now, you have the 12th pick in the draft. You have to make a judgment right now. You have to look at all the teams in, let's say, the first half of this draft, going down, let's say, to number 20. Is there any way that Tampa Bay or Washington might trade up above us at 12, to get Hendon Hooker? Is there a team that we think might be in love with Hendon Hooker who could be the trump card on us? Because if you're Nick Caserio and you decide that you want Hendon Hooker and you have the 12th pick, all I can say is you better not fail to get him. You better not watch as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trade up to the Bears at number 9 and steal Hendon Hooker from you, or to the Eagles at number 10 and steal Hendon Hooker. So that's, in the immortal words of Laura King, I'm just saying.
Well, it is going to be fascinating. You mentioned Caserio is the one pulling the trigger on that potential Colts-Texans trade for Stroud. This is one where the owner's got to put the key in and turn it too, because I think the owner's the one that's going to be concerned about what happens over the next 15 years, because he's going to be there. Caserio probably won't be. DeMeco Ryans, maybe he will, maybe he won't. The owner is going to be there, and he's the one that's going to have to live with it for the course of C.J. Stroud's career. He better be comfortable with doing it before they actually do it. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.